She says she loves to pack them their lunches in their lunchbox. I'm sorry, isn't this the same person who was befuddled, confounded, and confused when Billie Eilish had a lunchbox and she's like, are these still a thing? Lunchboxes? Oh, okay. Cool. Do you have kids or not, Meghan? Do you know what a lunchbox is? Or don't you? Do you pack lunches or don't you? We could never know. You don't make sense. Like, do you remember the things that you say? Who puts up a video and goes, what's a lunchbox? Is this a thing? And then tells me, I love to pack my kids' lunchboxes. Do you need to be committed, Meghan? Like, your brain is not functioning. Hello, how are you? Welcome to my channel. My name is Charcuterie. Today we're going to talk about Meghan Markle on the Jamie Kern-Lima show. Now, full disclosure, I ain't never heard of Jamie Kern-Lima, but that's also not content that I would usually watch, so she might be like the biggest celebrity podcaster that there ever was, and I'm just living under a rock. But I can tell you this much right now. Jamie is getting funding from somewhere because she's not good at this, okay? I've never, in all of my born days, seen anybody who is such an unresponsive interviewer. She had one look on her face the whole time, and this was it. What's that about, you guys? What is that about? And if Meghan said anything, this is the response Meghan got.
I have to prove it to you. And if you can't see it, I don't need to prove to you why that's your loss.
The nodding of the head with the plastered on smile that did not reach her eyes. This was a weird person who I found, quite frankly, worse to watch than Meghan. And Meghan was no party to watch either, because she was acting as though she had ants in her pants. I've never seen somebody squirm, fidget, play with their face, play with their hair, readjust it. I mean, she was so uncomfortable in that chair. I've just never seen anybody touch their face as much as she does in response to questions. Now, as we all know from Liar 101, isn't that kind of a tell? But anyway, maybe it's not. Maybe this is her baseline is that she just touches her face constantly when she talks. I just found it incredibly distracting how many times she was looking off into the distance. Oh, well. I mean, it's just strangeness. Now, she does look off a lot to collect her thoughts, which I do too. And I get comments all the time. Why don't you look at the camera? Well, sometimes you got to look off in the distance to collect your thoughts when you're going to sit there and talk for an hour. So I don't begrudge her wandering eyes. Some people just have that. I have that. But it's the constant face touching. It's the constant laughing, the general need to impress upon you that she's just, this happy-go-lucky, just super easy, super chill California girl who's just, she doesn't get why the whole world is crazy about what she's doing. She's just doing her own thing. She's just living her own life, She has this one face she puts on all the time that's supposed to be her vulnerable face where she bites her bottom lip. It's also practiced. And earlier in the week when this interview came out, I put this up on Twitter. X, whatever. Put this up on X. Why didn't she make it as an actress? It's who wipes the tears out of their eyes like this? And if you did it once, who makes it a repeated gesture? I've never wiped the tears out of my eyes like this. Okay, but anyway, back to the interviewer. Jamie, I feel has been funded by somebody. And the reason I say that is this. There was a couple of ads throughout this hour and a half long interview of bone-chilling boredom. And there's a few ads because it's on YouTube, but she continually interrupted what they were talking about to interject a promo for herself and her show. She was not hawking anything. She wasn't selling anything. There were no ad reads, which we've all become accustomed to. This was her interjecting edited video into the long interview to talk about her show, how awesome she is, and to promote her book and her newsletter. And these are long insets into the program. And it's all these celebrities that she's had on before saying things like, Jamie's the best person you've ever known. Jamie is like the only light you'll ever see. I mean, just like these ridiculous words of praise that wouldn't even be able to accurately fall in the head of the nicest person you ever knew. Like, nobody has all of these things. But anyway, I could not believe how many times we had to watch that throughout this hour and a half long podcast. It would have been one time, she's trying to promote a book. I get it. But every single time she'd stop, the first part of the promo was, send to a friend. And she's got this horrible voice. Send this to a friend and it's going to be super awesome for them. If you got anything out of this, please send it to them because this is how we bless each other. And it's like, Jamie, please. Let's get into this horrible interview. If you can manage it. You guys, I'm not even joking when I say I found Jamie to be more objectionable to watch than Meghan. I liked her less than Meghan. Do you understand what this means? It was horrible. It's not like we could pan over to the interviewer and be like, well, finally we found a friend. No, she was worse. So, to begin this episode, this hour and a half long, completely dull, revealing nothing episode, we start out with the teaser for this episode. So remember how there was that trailer that went out? Okay. Well, I don't want to watch the trailer when I've come to watch the thing. I can understand. I started all my videos out with a little clip to let you guys know, like some little highlight from it, get you interested, right? Everybody does that. That's just how you do it. So I'm not opposed to her doing that. But this is the actual trailer. So you're sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting. How long is this going to take, Then we get to watch, an extended promo of who Jamie Kern-Lima is to all the celebrities that she has interviewed. And it goes on and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. Finally, 7 minutes into the video, we get Jamie there, and she's going to give us an introduction to her thoughts and where she was when she decided to do this interview. What? Why? Like, just, all right already, okay? When are you going to get to it? And she tells us this long thing about, lately I've been thinking about when you're older, who you want to be sitting in the rocking chairs with, when you're older, and who you want to be by your side on the front porch. And I've just been thinking about that a lot. So I've moved my rocking chairs from my house into the studio. And I've invited a friend here who I've spent a long time, hours in these rocking chairs. And it's why all right, Jamie, are we going to get to it? We all know who this is. Like, all right already. So she gives us a super long intro. Finally, after she gets done explaining, we're going to come in our cozies and no makeup on. And we're just going to have this experience. So you guys get invited with us to sit in the rocking chair. Everything is upspeak. Everything is a question. She's not sure of anything. Finally, we turn to the other chair. There's Meghan. We're only 9 minutes and 30 seconds into the video. 10 minutes of my life is spent waiting for the show to start. They have this inexplicable exchange about friendship. And I can tell you right now that I thought immediately, well, this is going to be an hour and a half where I don't know anything that's happening because the two of you together cannot explain what you're trying to say. You both take a stab at it, and neither of you can explain. What they're trying to say is that they're new friends. This is a point that I realized way down like an hour and 15 minutes into the podcast, that they are relatively new to each other. Okay, but neither one of them seem to want to admit that this is not like a long-term, deeply held friendship. So neither one of them come around to that. Jamie starts it out by saying, Meghan, I get a lot of questions about how to make friends in later life. And the answer to that is friendship. What? That doesn't even make sense. Dear Jamie Kern-Lima, I'm an older person who'd like to make friends. Do you have any advice? Friendship. That's the problem. That's what I don't have. Right? Then they pan over to Meghan and, who acknowledged, that's a good question. How do you make friends in later life? Thinking Jamie was going to offer up some little bit of wisdom. Don't hold your breath on this podcast. And so Meghan, seeing that Jamie's floundering, decides to offer up some of her own insight about it. That's a really great question about how to make friends in later life. And one of the things I've realized is that sometimes it's easier to make friends with somebody that you don't really know. Like, back in the day when we used to be riding on planes and people didn't have a bunch of earbuds in and stuff like that, you would just find yourself talking to the person next to you and you felt like you could tell your whole life story to this stranger. And sometimes that's easier. Jamie Kern-Lima.
I get so many messages where people are alone or how do you make friends as an adult? Or how do I feel more worthy? Or any of those things. And I feel like one of the ways is through friendship, a great friendship.
Well, to answer, when you're saying someone writes in saying, how do you make friends as an adult? It's such a great question to find that depth of friendship at the onset. I think it's kind of when you're on a plane, and I remember back in the day, you'd sit next to a stranger and sometimes you'd feel more comfortable telling your life story to a complete stranger
Right.
than the person that is part of your day-to-day.
Yeah.
And so you start with that immediate trust, but I guess the difference is for us, it's just become so lasting.
Yeah.
I mean, so immediately I was like, oh, what? What are you two talking about? What is happening here? And they never resolve it. Okay, so you never know how you're supposed to find friends in later years. So at that point I was like, is this going to be the way it is? Do we have any kind of outline, any kind of way to steer you to? Because left to your own devices, this is going to be the worst. Well, Jamie came with some cards, some questions, so at least there's some guiding light, something they're aiming for, right? Again, don't get too excited. She says to Meghan, you don't know any of these questions. And Meghan says, of course I don't. But why would Meghan need to? Because this person right here, this Jamie Kern-Lima, is so excited to pull up a chair at the cool kids table. She would never sabotage this to save her life. So she's not going to ask Meghan anything hard. She's the most fawning, please love me. I want to be your cool new friend type of sad little individual. And Jamie has had all of these celebrities. She's had a lot of celebrities on this show. But again, this has got to be funded by somebody. Jamie does not have the skill to have had this level of celebrity on her podcast. She just simply doesn't. Jamie came from the world of QVC and she'd made she had makeup and stuff, and then she sold that line to L'Oreal. So she obviously has had celebrities in her life, working with her with L'Oreal and all of this, but to then sort of turn it into now she's this guru that's helping you understand how worthy you are and, kind of injecting your life with this new age woohoo business. What authority does she have? None. Because even at the end of the podcast, she puts up this disclaimer saying, I don't know anything. I never knew anything. You can't trust me. Just letting you know, I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not a psychologist. I have no degrees in counseling. So it's well, then what am I watching you for? Anyway, we get on to the questions. And so, the first couple of questions are Meghan, how are you? And of course, Meghan's I'm the happiest I've ever been. Okay. And then she turns to, well, what do you do for fun? And at this point, you're my brain can't melt any faster than it's melting. You guys better hurry up. I'm losing brain cells by the minute. Meghan says that she has to remind herself to have fun, that this is a really exciting time in life, and that the other day she just gave herself permission to go see a Broadway show. And that when she went to see this Broadway show, it illuminated for her this whole new side of her that she'd sort of forgotten existed. And as she watched them be so creative up there on stage, it reminded her, she saw herself in these creative people. And it reminded her, and these are her words, that she likes to be creative, just like those Broadway musicians, those dancers. All of that reminded her of herself and reminded her of how important it is for her to have her hands in the granular and the time-coded edits. What the F are you talking about? How does that have anything to do with what you saw on the Broadway musical? But she's constantly just throwing in this jargon. Hands in the granular and the time-coded edits. What? Like, she literally, the time-coded edits and the hands in the granular had no contextual meaning in that conversation. I mean, she was talking about how she, like, seeing creative people reminded her that she's creative and that she enjoys it, and that's why she felt so alive watching the Broadway musical, because she's them and they're her and all this. Hands in the granular. Time-coded edits. Let me just throw those phrases in, anything that sticks to make you believe that I actually am in these board meetings.
That was a really great experience of fun, but also affirmation that why is this lighting me up so much to watch creativity in action? Is like, oh, because that's what I get to do again. That's what I'm doing with all the projects I'm working on. Like, I had missed being creative and I had missed being able to just have my hands in the granular of time-coded edits and bringing a vision to life.
So after you get done throwing up in your bucket, and just when you think you can't take anymore, it takes a nosedive for the story time and the lies of Meghan's youth. Because, of course, we couldn't have any extended interview unless she pulled out another story, another lie, another foolishness that she's going to pass off now. And we're going to hear this story now multiple times. Robotic Jamie shows up and goes, Meghan, I do a lot of research for my podcasts, and I have been spending a lot of time on forums. And there's so many little girls just writing online about how they want to be like you. What are you talking about, Jamie? There ain't no such forum existing. What little 11 and 12-year-old girl is just typing her fingers bloody raw to let everybody know how much she loves Meghan and how she wants to grow up to be just like the Duchess of Sussex? There is no such 11 or 12-year-old that's over there like that. It doesn't exist. And also, you creeper, what are you doing? What, you had to go down some rabbit hole to find some little forum where there's 11 and 12-year-old girls losing their minds about Meghan Markle? What? Anyway, Meghan is like, yes, I really take it seriously that I'm such an inspiration to the young girls. That's such a heavy responsibility on me. And she says that she always tries to remember what it was to be that little 13-year-old girl, what it was like to be, 11-year-old her. And she's like, because she does a lot of, when I was 13, I worked at a little yogurt shop called Humphrey Yogurt. I know, great name, right? Always got to say that, because the story wouldn't be complete if she said Humphrey Yogurt, great name, right? Anyway, and his first job, and I had to take out the trash one day. And, at that time, it was the 90s, so you got to think about where we were culturally. Baywatch, Yasmin Bleeth, and I'm outside taking the trash out, and I see Yasmin Bleeth. And this was huge for me. And I can't even explain to you how much courage it took to go and talk to Yasmin. And I went up to her, and I gathered all my courage, and I said, Yasmin, I loved you in this commercial. And she actually asked me what my name was. She asked me. That was huge. And then she introduced herself and said, I'm Yasmin. As though I didn't know who she was. But that, for me, was a moment where I remembered to treat people with dignity because it had meant so much to me. And so, nobody tells you when you become an actor how to do this famous thing. But I remembered from Yasmin how important it was to be intentional with the little girls that come up to me. Yasmin could have been talked to 1,000 times that day, but she was nice to me. You needed Yasmin Bleeth to tell you in a back alley when you were taking the trash out to be nice to people? Bullshit on the whole story. What was Yasmin Bleeth doing in the back alley, by the way, may I ask you? Now, I'm not saying that she didn't see celebrities a lot from time to time. She grew up in LA. She grew up, probably saw a lot of people, probably had many chance encounters. But in the back alley of Humphrey Yogurt, taking the trash out as a 13-year-old girl. I mean, first of all, what is this tale she tells about her defying the labor laws just because she needed a little change to get a mix-up from those TV dinners she always had to eat? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what are you talking about 13-year-olds taking the trash out in the back alley? There was Yasmin Bleeth. Did this really happen, or was this a fever dream? I just simply do not believe this story. And part of the reason I don't believe it is, as they're talking, before she even tells this story, she says to Jamie, you know, this story that I'm about to tell you might not totally make sense, but I want to share it with you. And by the end of the story, I'm thinking, well, that story makes perfect sense as far as you trying to illustrate that it's important for you to be intentional when you talk to the girls that come up to you, supposedly, and that you want to treat them with dignity because you remember what it felt like when somebody did that for you. Okay, so what exactly about the story doesn't fit? The only thing I can conclude that she would say that is that she one was underselling the story so that you'd be so amazed by the meaningfulness of it by the end of it, or she knew she was telling a straight up lie and wasn't sure how the story was going to end. So maybe it's not a great example. You know, it's like, what is this? This isn't a great example, but let me just share it with you anyway. It's a fine example. I just don't believe it. I mean, that's the real problem. Anyway, by the way, back to Jamie's face. By the end of the story, I mean, Meghan is like trying to explain to Jamie the meaningfulness of this. And any normal person would be like, oh, that is so kind of Yasmin. That must have made you feel really good. I can see why that was a light bulb moment for you and just how to take care of other people. Like, we know we're supposed to do this, but, you know, just to see it in action, to see how it made you feel like that. Some kind of dialogue. This is what we get from Jamie.
Mm.
Yeah.
So you can imagine it would be very hard if you were Meghan to continue to talk to and express to a person who's giving you so little back. Like, the conversation continued to die at Jamie's end. She's the interviewer. She's supposed to be driving this, you know? And instead we get Meghan over here extending her story beyond anywhere it needs to go, just trying to elicit some kind of human response from Jamie. This podcast was an hour and a half long because it was Meghan constantly trying to pull from Jamie some kind of human response. If Jamie could have just done us the courtesy of caring about what Meghan was saying or listening to what Meghan was saying so she could have a response, this thing could have been cut down to 20 minutes. Continuing. Oh, I forgot about this. Okay, well, maybe the reason that Jamie looked so deadpan and unattached to the story Meghan was telling is because her mind was thinking about where she was going next. So she couldn't really focus on what Meghan was saying because she was trying to figure out how she was going to bring us into this plane of spiritual bullshit. Okay, because Jamie loves to think of herself as some kind of guru. All right? Enter some of the lamest talk I've heard in a minute. Nobody who has retained their brain and not checked it at the door could listen to these two women and be like, the depth of wisdom, the spiritual understanding, I'm floored. Okay, so but Jamie wants to think of herself as this person who enlightens you to better. So she says to Meghan,
Do you think our lives are divinely ordered, or like our steps are divinely ordered when you think about that moment and sort of like seeing that example, and now it's part of your life all the time?
Meghan is wholly out of her element because Meghan doesn't believe anything. And it's super evident that she's on shoddy ground here. Like, she doesn't even know how to respond to this. Divinely ordained. Like, what are you talking about? There's no God but me. And so she's like, well, I actually have had just highs and lows. And there's some days in my life, which is an amazing life, but sometimes it's a lot. And there have been times when I've just been like, how do I keep going? Like, how? And I had somebody tell me one time that this is the life I chose before I was even here. I chose this life.
This is your soul contract. You signed up for this. You signed up for this before you were here.
And that was such an interesting thought to me. So that when I get down, I return to that fact that this is the life I chose. I want this. And it helps me. It helps me get through knowing that I wanted this even before I was even here. Okay, I've heard some whoppers in my time. Never in my life have I heard anybody who legitimately believes that before they ever entered the earth, they were given like a catalog of lives, and then they picked the one they have. And they have to be happy with what they have, because before they even got here, before they were even a thought in their parents' minds, they'd already been thumbing through the catalog of life and picked one out. So they don't get to complain, because it was their choice. What the F are you talking about? This was my choice before I even got here. What? God forbid this was my choice. You know what I'm saying? Like, of course, there's a lot of great things in my life, but I don't want to believe that everything that happens to me is because baby me, before I was even an embryo, had made selections? And the fact that she refers to it as a fact. What religion teaches this? You guys, please tell me. Is there like a religion that legitimately teaches that you decided before you even got here what your life would be? The highs and lows. So Meghan decided to be a failed actress, go into the royal family, break it up, turn her husband into a weak, ineffectual man, and then go to her kitchen and cook subpar jam. That was her choice? Did someone give her an edited catalog? Like, what happened here? Anyway, seeing that Meghan is grasping for straws, Jamie rises to the occasion for once, but has very little she can offer to this befuddled Meghan Markle. And she says, well, you know, I have this friend who is like super Catholic, like really Catholic. And she goes and sees psychics and mediums because like she says God made them too. So they, you know, they've got something to say too. And she's really Catholic. Does that help you, Meghan?
You know, in my life, I have so many friends of all different faiths. I have friends that love everything. I have one of my friends who's the strongest Catholic I know also sees every psychic, every meeting. Like, she's like, God made them too. We're going to cover our bases and all the things.
Like, do you understand the disjoiners that were happening in this conversation? Like, they are two ships passing in the night. Meghan doesn't know what to say. She's offering up some kind of ridiculous anecdote. Let me tell you something right now. Your friend's not super Catholic, okay? Your friend is not super Catholic if she's still seeing psychics and mediums. It's kind of like two divergent worlds. But anyway, they close this up by Jamie, like, really needing Meghan to buy into the idea that this was divinely ordained. And Meghan's like, well, you know, I know you think that, so that's good for me. Like, the fact that that is how you see it, I love that for you. Awkward. But we all know that Jamie Kern Lima was on Meghan's podcast on Tuesday. And so for us to believe that Jamie would have agreed to do Meghan's podcast, but then Meghan would not have deigned to be on hers, you know, you can't do that. And Jamie is one of the only people, to my knowledge, that Meghan has had on her podcast that also has one. So of course, according to the etiquette of the thing, if you're going to be on mine, I then have to be on yours. So this is not like a divine intervention as far as Meghan sees it. It's a business move. And beyond all odds and beyond any understanding, Jamie has a litany of celebrities on there. And the sort of a celebrity like Oprah's been on her podcast, all right? And Oprah and Meghan, you know, they seem to swim in the same circles. So it makes perfect sense why Meghan would feel that she could get on this podcast and it wouldn't be this expose of her life, because Jamie just wants to make sure she doesn't lose that chair at the cool kids table. And she's not going to ask Meghan anything hard. When Jamie realizes that she can't get Meghan to agree that God's hand is on both of theirs, she decides to move on. And she asks Meghan, can you tell me, you know, there's lots of chatter about you. How much of that are you looking at? Now, Jamie, that's a dumb question, because we can already anticipate the answer. Even if we hadn't seen the Time 100 interview, we already know the answer to this question. Now, Jamie may not have realized they were going to ask her that same question at Time 100 if her interview was filmed first. But it's a dumb question either way. I thought the same thing when I saw Time 100. That's a stupid question, because she's going to say she doesn't see any of it. She doesn't know any of it, right? So why are we even asking her? That's much like the question that Jamie's going to ask later. Are you and Harry going to be married forever? What, you think that this is going to be the time when Meghan exposes herself and says, no, I have a terrible marriage and I don't know where my husband is half the time. He's on another continent because he can't stand me? At what point did you think you were going to get a revelation by asking that? You know, you're just trying to cover your base and be like, well, I asked Meghan. But don't ask anything that you know they're going to know the answer to. That's a boring, stupid interview. And nobody, no matter how close you think that you are to them behind closed doors, are going to expose themselves on a stage when they have never discussed the happiness or the sadness within their own marriage. We'll get on to that. But back to this question. Meghan, how much internet do you look at? How many articles are you reading? What do you know about your name in the news? Meghan's like, I don't know anything. I don't know. And of course we knew she was going to say that. And then she says, I only look at like maybe 1% of what's out there. And that's only what people bring me. Because I'm so head down. I don't have time. I just don't have time. I'm too busy being a mom and all this stuff. Okay, well, it's really important for us to know that she does get brought stories that are important. And she does get brought the things that are pertinent and that could teach her something or have some insight, okay? So there are people combing all of the articles for things she ought to know, right? So bear that in mind. At this point, since we've covered the fact that Meghan's not looking at any of the things online and she has no idea how much people hate her, Jamie knows how much people hate her because Jamie apparently has been doing a lot of research. And when she wasn't looking at that forum full of 11 and 12-year-olds praising Meghan up one side and down the other, she happened to see that things weren't always so glowing. So she's going to take this opportunity to let you know that Meghan's an amazing person. And here are some behind-the-scenes stories that maybe you didn't know about. Of course you didn't know about because these happened to Jamie and she wants to share them with you. Then she goes and tells us the most embarrassing story for Meghan, really, and also for her. So Jamie says, I had Meghan over, and I was trying to figure out what to put out, and I decided I was going to do a charcuterie board. And I actually just learned what a charcuterie board is like a couple of years ago. So wasn't really sure how to do it, but like I decided to do my best. The whole time she's trying to lay out the story, Meghan is like laughing, giggling, trying to like jump in like, oh, the charcuterie. Oh, is that the story you're going to tell? Okay. It's really funny. Okay. Go ahead. And she goes on to tell about how she didn't know what she was doing. So the end result was a little painful. And she shows a picture. Okay, we've probably seen more artistic ones. Meghan's in the background going, I mean, A+ forever, right? A+ forever. And Jamie's being sort of self-deprecating about what she doesn't know. And, you know, then Meghan comes in and she's like, here, Meghan, here's what we're eating. And this is the part of the story that I just don't believe, okay? We're supposed to believe that Jamie took a picture of the haphazard charcuterie board that she'd thrown together in her, in her appalling ignorance of the things that she should know. Oh, God, who cares? You put some food out for your guests. Like, are they so rude that they would be like, oh, the carrots and hummus don't look pretty, so I'm sorry, I'm gonna refrain. Sorry. Anyway, she takes a picture of her charcuterie board. Meghan comes over. She's so insecure, this little girl who wants to be at the cool kids table, that she says to Meghan, I know it's not very good. What would you do to have made this better? That's awkward and weird. And we've already established that Jamie is not a human being, so maybe she had been programmed to ask such a stupid question. But Meghan actually, in the story, goes to the girl's pantry, goes to her fridge, pulls together some items to make it better, and then presents a different charcuterie board. That is so unacceptable. That is so unacceptable. Okay, maybe it's just because I'm from the deep south, all right? And I would never insult my host by saying, you know what, this kind of is pretty shitty. All right. And I think that if you'd added blank, blank, and blank, I'll just do it. Now, I know that's not the vibe of the story. The story is Jamie invited her to make it better and Meghan accepted and made it better. But why I don't believe this story is that no picture was taken of the better board. So we have a picture of the poor offerings that Jamie had, but no picture of the real thing that Meghan fixed that was so beautiful it looked like it should be on the cover of a magazine. We didn't want to take a picture of the beautiful thing, which is why I think that Jamie recreated the junky board to prove that she knows nothing but Meghan is so awesome. Because we've seen Meghan's ability to create a charcuterie board on her show. So maybe she thought that she didn't have to show a picture of Meghan's. I don't know. But the whole story was like, you guys, this is not the point for Meghan that you think that it is. It was rude of Meghan to accept that. She should have said, this is awesome. I love what you did. Let's just eat and talk. You know, I would never in my wildest dreams be like, yeah, let me show you what could make it better, because what that means is I saw this and saw it for how lame it is. Who would do that? I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments. Do you think I'm making a mountain over a molehill? Sometimes I can. Then we get into the story about how Jamie had a ton of people over to the house, and Meghan, because she's such an awesome person, decided to drop off to Jamie a basket with ice cream and some homemade dessert syrup. And, you know, this is the famous picture where in her correspondence, Meghan is using cards that have HRH on them. Her Royal Highness Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, is so ridiculous. If you're like just two friends and you... Okay, let me just say this right now. When you know that your friend has a house full of guests, in-laws and stuff like that, I think I really do like the idea of getting a basket together, bringing it over, leaving it on the doorstep. I don't need to talk to you. Here's some goodies for your guests. That's super thoughtful. I love that. I want to be a person that does things like that. I've always wanted to be a person who does better at thinking about how I can minister to others. So on its face, that's fine. But you do not, if you are her friend, put in a card to impress her guests, HRH, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. You're not even really allowed to use that, are you? Well, I didn't think so. But then I saw these articles come out yesterday where they're saying that Prince William intends to strip them of this style, HRH, so that they can no longer use it. Thank God. I mean, our true hero. Once again. As a side note, can we just talk about how he is just having a resurgence? That beard is everything. But anyway, continuing. A true friend would not need to throw in your face how important they are while they do this gesture. The whole thing was so emblematic of who she is, because she will do a nice thing with such intention and purpose behind it to cast a light on herself. It's not so she can lift the burden off of you. And by the way, can I just say, if you have a house full of guests, the way they kept going, so many people, I don't think 2 pints of ice cream are going to cut it, if I may say. I think that, you know what I'm saying? It's like, if you really want to give people dessert, 2 pints of ice cream just isn't it. When you have a house full of people, like, burst into the rafters, it's everyone, kids, adults, everyone's crawling around. Anyway, so it just felt like kind of a shallow gesture. Anyway, she goes on to tell a couple of other stories. She says that one time they were on a playground, some kid fell, Meghan bestirred herself and got up and helped the kid. I mean, can you imagine? How amazing is she? And then she also sent her daughter this cutting board that said Chef Wonderful on it, because her daughter is really into cooking. I don't know. Again, maybe it's a Southern girl in me, but if I were going to send somebody a cutting board, I wouldn't have it Chef Wonderful, because that seems like a weird thing that you would put on. I would probably put the girl's a name, initials, or monogram on it. That's what I would have done, but whatever. Who cares? All of these stories are to service you because you've been so beleaguered by the media to believe that Meghan is not a good person. You're so clouded up with these bad stories of Meghan. You have no idea the person she is, and she's the sort of person that helps a kid who falls. And it's just sad you don't realize that about her. Okay, well, then we fall into, Meghan, can you explain to us why you are so awesome? How did you get like this? And Meghan's like, well, I think it just is from years of not being able to be heard. My voice just didn't matter. And you know what I'm referring to. And so now it's just me loving everybody the way I just had to spend years not being loved. And this is just my way of filling my cup back up after so many years of people ignoring me.
And a lot of that's probably doing the things for other people that I had missed for so long, when you don't feel seen or when you feel lonely and you just want someone to like reach out in a meaningful and thoughtful way. Tiny, tiny things that
all anybody ever did was pay attention to you, Meghan. What are you talking about, these dark days? This is going to be one of 2 times that she refers to the days, back in the days, the dark days of the royal family, back when I was in England. And I'm sorry, Meghan, those were not dark days for you. So you need to just quit it. Just quit it and cut it, okay? We're tired of it. We're tired of hearing you lie like this. But anyway, as long as we're talking about those dark, dark days, Jamie says, can you remind us how you and Harry started calling each other M and H? And Meghan's like, oh, yeah, I can. Okay, so when we first started going out, we weren't allowed to let anybody know that's what was happening. And so, we were just reduced to code, and so he was H and I became M, and it stuck. And here we are, 7 years later, we're still M and H. 7 years. How can a person be so destructive in 7 years? What in the world? 7 years is really such a short amount of time. And I was sort of annoyed by how gloating she was about, we've been together, if you can believe, 7 whole years. Oh, okay, Meghan, I'm coming up on my 15th year anniversary of being with my husband. 7 years is nothing, and 15 years is nothing. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what are these? But don't try to impress upon me that this is such like an extended, lasting love story, because can you believe it? 7 years. That's nothing, Meghan. Okay, why don't you pan on over to Prince William and Catherine, who are coming up on their 14-year anniversary? What about that? Here's the thing. There are so many things that were talked about in this interview that I kept thinking we were going to get to some point that was super interesting, But we still haven't. And here I am, 46 minutes in, and I haven't said anything interesting. Because there wasn't anything interesting. She took forever to ask any of the interesting questions. But then we get around to, Meghan, tell us about how you feel with the Meghan effect. The Meghan effect is this thing where apparently Meghan will wear something and then it'll sell out. And she's all about uplifting these small businesses. So she sees it as this badge of honor where she gets to wear something and then help these little businesses that, but for her, would probably have closed up shop. Literally, this is what she says. I'm like, don't hang your hat too much on that, because I don't think that that's a real fact, that you've saved so many businesses from having to close up that brick and mortar because, all they needed was a Meghan Markle to wear their ring, their shirt, their bracelet. Then you did, and then they were pulled up from the depths of depravity. But she says, and she has the gall to say, that back in those dark days, second time talking about it, back in those dark days, when she didn't have a voice and when she just wasn't allowed to talk, she had chosen to wear stuff from little businesses to help them. So, little business in Scotland, little place in Wales, she'd pick one of their items and then she'd wear it, and then that business would just explode. And it's because, even when she wasn't allowed to have a voice, that was the way she talked. That was the way she took care of others. And that's kind of the way she filled her cup back then. And I'm like, is one of the ways she filled her cup back then when you were telling the people who worked for you to go get free samples and free stuff from designer houses in Paris? I don't know if that's uplifting the small business, but maybe that's just me.
Makes me feel really great when specifically it can help uplift brands that have a great ethos and female founders. And,
Yeah.
there was a long time where I wasn't out talking. So if you
Yeah.
couldn't hear me, how could I be heard through what I was wearing if that's what people were focusing on? You didn't have to say a word, but it would move product for small companies or allow, even when we were living in the UK, a small company in Scotland able to, hire 50 more employees, or
Yeah.
small businesses who would take women out of positions of being trafficked and instead give them jobs. And by wearing those jeans, I knew it was going to allow them to save more women. It could have been the day that they were going to give up.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been the day that they're just going, why am I doing this? It's not worth it. And if I can come in with a little sprinkle of fairy dust just by wearing a bracelet or doing something, and that changes the course of their business, that's a huge honor.
Well, from that conversation, we pivot to just talk of Harry in general. And Jamie would like to read Meghan this quote that's been floating around. And so she reads this quote in which Harry says, everything my wife touches gold. Everything she does is amazing. I don't think there's anything Meghan has ever done that was not truly and completely inspired. And I'm really excited to see her on this journey. And it's just this obligatory thing a husband would say if a reporter comes to him and sticks a mic in his face. What do you think about Meghan stuff? Of course he's going to say she's awesome, she's amazing, everything she touches is gold. Meghan's like, wait a second. Wait, when did he say that? When did he say that? She asks the crew. And Jamie, who she could have just asked, Jamie's right there. And Jamie's like, this week. He said it this week. She's like, really? Wow. Okay, cool. I didn't know that. Great. Nice. And I'm like, oh, was that not part of the 1% your staff thought was worthy of your attention? These glowing words your husband has to say about you, regardless about whether they were necessarily pressed upon him because maybe somebody, we don't get the context for when he said this. But it seems to me that if there was a quote going around about something nice your husband said, somebody in your staff would have brought it to you if they thought that mattered to you. But see, Meghan doesn't care what Harry thinks. Meghan doesn't care if Harry thinks she's doing a great job. Screw him. He is part of the problem here. Like, get out of the way with your sad sack face and just, like, figure yourself out, because I'm over here moving mountains with my podcast and my Netflix show and my product line, and I don't know what you're up to, okay? But, of course, I mean, even her response to what he had said was kind of stilted.
I love that you're hearing this for the first time. He says, I'm so happy for my wife and fully supportive and support absolutely everything she's done and continues to do. How does that make you feel?
Oh, he's such a great partner. I feel that, right? I feel that every day in how supportive he's been and is. But I didn't know he said that. So that's really nice.
That leads into conversations about their marriage in general. And Jamie's like, you can tell that she really feels like she's asking some hard-hitting questions, but we know they're not hard-hitting because these aren't going to be questions that get honest answers. Meghan, could you tell me a little bit about what marriage is like? Like, how are you guys doing? And of course, what's Meghan going to say? This is terrible. We don't like each other. He's miserable. He's off doing his thing. I'm doing mine because I'm just tired of dealing with him. No, she's never going to say that. So she's like, this is the best we've ever been. It's like a honeymoon period.
We immediately went into the trenches together.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, like 6 months into dating. So now 7 years later, when you have a little bit of breathing space, you can just enjoy each other in a new way. And that's why I feel like it's more of a honeymoon period for us now. Yeah.
Okay. But then we get the dumbest question of the entire interview. You guys think you're going to be married forever? Who would ask that question to anybody, even if it was somebody who you did not know seemed to have kind of a tumultuous situation in the media as far as where her marriage stood? You could ask this to anybody. Anybody in the world. You invite them to your podcast. They happen to be a married person. You guys think you're going to be married forever? Who's going to be like, you know what? No. Some days I just want to kick that guy in the teeth. Like, who is going to like decide that this is the moment when they're going to break down the great angst they have in their marriage? It's a stupid question. Who told her to prepare that? So we get the same boneheaded answer you think you're going to. And then Meghan feeling like a little bit anxious that she's asking these questions because they must be in response to things that people are saying about her, as though she doesn't know. She then decides to interject the conversation with a little like, I don't know if you've noticed, but my husband is a fox. Who calls their husband a fox? Is this 1972? I've never heard anybody refer to anybody else like legitimately as a fox. Maybe people do, and I'm just like, that's not the terminology that me or my friends or any human being I've ever met actually uses. But anyway, he's a fox, and she wants you to know that she's still real hot for him. So to dispel any of those nasty little rumors that might be going around, she wouldn't know. She only knows 1% of the things that are being said, but just so long as you know, Harry's a fox. He's very good looking.
Do you think you'll be married forever?
Yes.
I have a letter.
He's also a fox, if you haven't noticed. My husband's very, very handsome. But his heart is even more beautiful.
I hope you do think your husband's attractive. I hope everyone who's married out there still thinks their spouses are attractive people. Like, this isn't an insight. God forbid that you find yourself married to somebody you're disgusted by. So again, not an insight. Oh, can you feel that I'm getting annoyed? Okay. Then, because we've talked about how supportive Harry is, then we get the question of, how are you supportive of Harry since he's so supportive of you? Okay, that's a pretty decent question because I would like to know some particulars about this. And you know what we're told? That Meghan is this shining light of common sense because she doesn't have her head all like in a bunch of tabloids and noise. She can actually come and help Harry when he doesn't know which way to turn. She can kind of steer him clear because she doesn't have all this outside noise going on. Also, she cooks bacon for him. So there's that. And she goes on to describe at length this bacon sandwich she made for him. And I'm like, yeah, but you cooked one of those for Michael /Brooklyn/director. So how much do you really love Harry? if you're handing out those goods everywhere. But, you know, all her bacon makes the boys come to the yard. Okay, let's see. Then we get into an interesting conversation in which she talks about her kids, and she gets real teary-eyed, and, you know, she doesn't really... The emotion feels real canned when it comes to Harry. She summons up a different kind of emotion for the discussion of her kids. And she talks about them as though they're real. And I'm beginning to believe that they are real. I just don't believe they're born of her body. So I'm starting to think these kids do exist. I just don't believe that she's as involved in their lives or cares about them as much as she says she does, but maybe. But she says, you know, she's been striving to be a good mom. She's reading all the self-help books. And of course it does come naturally, you know, she doesn't really need the books, but it's good to get some tips and tricks. And one of the tips and tricks that somebody told her was to have these email addresses for her kids. Create email addresses for them, like secret email addresses, and then send things to those email addresses. Little notes, funny things the kids said, a little voice message here and there. In theory and in concept, I completely believe that this is a really, really, really cute idea. Because as she says, it's like a time capsule. So all those things that you would forget to tell them at the end of the day, before she goes to bed, she sends something to Lilybet and sends something to Archie. And, you know, when they are like 16 or 18, she's going to give them these email addresses, and they're going to have thousands and thousands and thousands of messages dating way back to when they were little of things that they can read about themselves. In theory, I agree that sounds like a super thoughtful thing to do. I won't throw her under the bus and say that's stupid. But in reality, I think this would be a thing that you would start but then sort of forget. There'd be years in there when you forgot to email. But then also, how much do you think that your 18-year-old is going to want to read thousands of emails back from when they were a toddler? There might be a time like later on in life, like maybe in their late 30s or 40s, and they're kind of wondering, like maybe when they have kids, it'll be a resource. So I'm not saying it'll never happen. I'm just saying, I just don't know, for all the effort you're going to put in, it'll be appreciated when you give it. It's going to be like another thing for them to have to look through. Like, is there anything more annoying than looking through old emails? Honestly, I'd rather have a scrapbook. And it could just be because I like paper in my hands. I don't like to read a book on a screen. I don't like to even do my calendar on a screen. Like, I can't remember things that I have seen on my calendar on my phone the way I can pen and paper. So that's the way my mind works. So when I hear that, I appreciate the concept of it. The reality for me, I wouldn't look at it. Maybe not as much as the person who gave it to me would want me to. But, you know, that's one of her things. And to be honest with you, to be frank with you, I feel like that was like the best part of this entire interview, which lets you know how bad the whole thing was. Because it's a pretty good idea, but it's not a really usable idea. Anyway, she says that she's been into that. My other thing for her, too, is like, Meghan, be careful, because, you know, there's these things called hackers. And now that they know that you have an email address for her and for him, you have just invited every hacker out there to try to figure out what these email addresses are and get this treasure trove of info that you say you've been putting on there. And now all they have to do, hack into those email addresses, and now basically hold that info for ransom to you and Harry and be like, we're going to release this unless you give us X, Y, or Z. You know? So I just feel like, be careful letting us know there's this treasure trove of electronic messages that are out there just for the taking if somebody's clever enough to figure it out. That's all I'm saying. But anyway, of course, talking about the kids makes both of them cry. Jamie is like, full body chills. I'm getting full body chills. Well, Meghan talks about her electronic memory boxes. Okay. So after they get done crying and crying and crying some more, Meghan says that, you know, one of the words she uses with her kids, one of the phrases she uses with her kids is, you know, you just can't do it yet. And they have like another crying session over like trying to explain life to little kids. And then it gets into, Meghan, do you ever feel unworthy? And this clip's been going around for ages. I'm just, at this point, at 57 minutes into the video, I'm just not here to rehash what you already know. It's a stupid clip where she talks about, I'm tired of playing, you know, the game where I'm trying to make everybody happy. I just don't care anymore. I'm just here to live my life, and people can misunderstand me if they want, but I'm not playing that game anymore. Okay. I wish that I could believe that for her. You know, I really do. maybe she's coming to a point now in her life where she actually believes that because she is having some marginal success, at least in her estimation, with the show and the jam and, all this. So for her, she's at a stage now where she believes that she actually can stop caring what people think because she believes she's standing on top of the mountain. But was she saying this way back in the day? Now, Meghan claims that way back in the day, this has been the ethos of her heart all along. Because when she was on Suits, remember that show, Suits? She'll remind you, she was on there for like 7 years. She says that in her trailer, she had a quote on the wall, and the quote said, "I've already settled it for myself, so criticism and flattery go down the same drain, and I'm quite free." So this isn't like a new thing that she feels. This is kind of how she's always felt. But then I'm like, but then Meghan, why are you constantly reiterating to us things that we know you're responding to from the public? If criticism and flattery go down the same drain and you're quite at peace, and this has been who you've been way since back in Suits, then why must you always respond? In fact, in this same interview with Jamie, she goes on to fit in once again a response to the fact that her kids are so important to her that she did not want to have that crew up at her house because she wants her kids to live the life of kids at their home, and their home has to be a safe space. So that's why she wasn't in the kitchen, her own kitchen, on her show, and that's why she rented out a space. And I'm like, Meghan, you keep telling us this same story in the same exact way. That way back when you were on Suits, that was a 200-person crew. That tidbit has no relevance. But now she's on a different show with a smaller crew, 80-people crew. But she didn't want that in her house. Right. And she keeps telling us this. But then she also simultaneously wants us to believe that flattery and criticism go down the same drain and she's quite free. No, you're not. You keep telling us the same things in all your interviews in the same exact way. You're not free at all. You're not even free to choose your own wording because you keep repeating the same things that you have a plan and written script that you just continue to issue out. Free nothing. You're like the least free person I've ever seen. All right, well, then we get into the Gwyneth Paltrow situation. And by the way, towards the end of this interview came all the questions that, if you were a little curious, we finally are getting some info. You would hope, but we actually don't. She says to Meghan, tell us a little bit about the Gwyneth Paltrow thing. Gwyneth had you over and you guys did something on Instagram. And Meghan's like, oh, yeah, I know. I had no idea that there was any kind of backlash. I don't know what's going on. And she says that Gwyneth was going to do something. It's a very garbled explanation of what happened.
She texted me and she said, oh my gosh, I did this interview and I can't remember verbatim what she said, but she's like, I give up. I don't even know what to say anymore. And I said, well, I didn't hear about it. Hadn't heard about it at all. I just texted her back. I was like, I hear there's something about pie. And then we ended up, she was doing something on Instagram. So I ordered some pie on Instacart. We sat there and just ate some pie and laughed and caught up a little bit. And then I came back home.
In essence, boiled down, Gwyneth Paltrow just wanted to have an Instagrammable moment. She wanted to troll everybody. And so she asked Meghan, do you want to troll with me? And so Meghan ordered some pie off of Instacart over at Gwyneth's house, and they ate pie, and it was for Instagram and clearly meant nothing. So there's that. But what I really think is interesting is we return to the interview once again, because every time there's a lull in the conversation, Jamie goes back to the holy grail of maintaining her friendship with Meghan in that you're so awesome, and I'm just trying to understand why other people don't see it like I do. And Meghan says, and I thought this was very interesting, Meghan goes, yeah, it's like the whole world has an idea of who I am. But the people who know me know who I really am. And Marcus, Marcus. Yes, we know Marcus. Marcus Anderson? Meghan just brought up Marcus in this interview. Marcus is so excited whenever he sees something come out in the media that is indicative of who I really am. And he's always like, that's the girl I know. That's the Meghan I know. And, so the people who know me know. And I thought that was crazy that she'd bring him up. Because, we've all had our questions about Marcus Anderson. When are we going to get a deep dive on him? I've looked. There's just not a lot out there about that guy. But he is definitely her one and only. That's her ride or die. There ain't nothing. H, she can't even bother to give him the rest of the letters of his name. We get some more tomfooleries about Meghan being like, thank you, Jamie, for this space where I can just be. It's just more ass kissing. Then we get the question of, do you watch any of the, royal shows? Do you watch Bridgerton, The Crown? Meghan's like, Bridgerton. Sometimes I watch Bridgerton sometimes. I'm like, you didn't watch The Crown? Who wouldn't? Like, if you were a person who had been on the periphery of that world but didn't even really like that world, you were going to tell me that you wouldn't indulge in a show that is kind of like all about their dirt? You know, if you were a member of that house, like a member in good standing, like if I'm a Princess Catherine or a Prince William, I'm not watching that drivel. You know, because it's all just a dramatized version of my family's memories, you know, so I don't want to watch that garbage. But if you were Meghan, like, that's right up your alley. What are you talking about? Of course you want to watch that because, yes, you have had an inside seat to that. And you know what could be true and what couldn't be. Bullshit that the only thing she watched was Bridgerton. Bridgerton? That's not even in the same category as The Crown. We get the question of, Meghan, what's your name? Like, what is your real name? What do you like to go by? Meghan won't answer it. She's as awkward as can be about this. It's like, you know, she's like, well, what do you like to be called? And Meghan's like, crickets. And then she says, you know, I've heard that there are some chickens called Sussex chickens, and I got to get some of those for my brood. That wasn't the question, Meghan. The question was, what do we call you? Because you've gone by a couple of things now. And she sort of like wraps it up as though it's not even important. I haven't gone by Meghan Markle since I got married, so. But she never says Meghan Sussex. Like, she never goes there again, acting as though that would be the name that she goes by, Meghan Sussex. And, you know, if she was in England, nobody would call her Meghan Sussex. That wouldn't be the proper, to my knowledge, that wouldn't be the proper way to use that title. Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, if she had decided to maintain and stay there. You can't be the Duchess of a place that you don't live in. So Meghan Sussex sounds ridiculous, and she knows it. So she can't say that now, because I guess that was part of the 1% of what people told her was, yeah, that was kind of an awkward cringe moment. People didn't like it. So she definitely didn't want to spend too much time there.
So much talk about your name, Meghan Sussex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Now I heard there are Sussex chickens, and I need to get a couple of Sussex chickens to add to my flock. I'm so excited. Got my girls. Yeah.
And so do you use Markle anymore?
No, not since I got married.
Not since you got married.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Let me just say also, by the way, sorry, random point. There's a lot of weird cuts in this video where you feel like suddenly we're talking about something else and we were talking about different topic altogether. But obviously they felt like they had to cut certain parts out. So sometimes the transitions aren't real great. Anyway, they ask Meghan about her morning routine. She says that she gets up at 6:30. She wakes the kids up at 7. And then she puts on her workout clothes or whatever. And then she goes and makes breakfast. And she says she loves to pack them their lunches in their lunchbox. I'm sorry, isn't this the same person who was befuddled, confounded, and confused when Billie Eilish had a lunchbox? And she's like, are these still a thing? Lunchboxes? Oh, okay. Cool. Do you have kids or not, Meghan? Do you know what a lunchbox is? Or don't you? Do you pack lunches or don't you? We could never know. You don't make sense. Do you remember the things that you say? Who puts up a video and goes, what's a lunchbox? Is this a thing? And then tells me, I love to pack my kids' lunchboxes. Do you need to be committed, Meghan? Like, your brain is not functioning. Okay, they asked, do you want to make a memoir? No, I have too much of my life to live. No memoir yet. Maybe a kid's book. Okay. Are you going to run for office? Oh, no, never. I'd never run for office. Yuck, gross. Ew. Then what are you doing with As Ever? Have you got any things in the works? You gonna let us know? Says Jamie. You gonna let us know? And Meghan says, hostess gifts. I'm thinking about doing something in the hostess gift realm. So we get that tantalizing tidbit. And that's pretty much it. They end it with poor Jamie trying to, again, elevate the experience with the intellectual and the ethereal. And she says that she wants to read Meghan a quote that was super meaningful for her and that reminds her of Meghan. And Meghan completely steals her thunder and goes, oh, is it the arena quote? Now, of course it is, because since one person shared Roosevelt's quote about being in the arena and, you know, not caring about what anybody else says, but just getting up and fighting and, you know, fighting till you win. You know, everybody thinks they're the first person ever read that. And so you can kind of see Jamie's disappointed that this didn't get to be a thing she read over Meghan as a blessing because Meghan's already anticipated it. And Meghan does that multiple times throughout the show, and she does it every time she talks to people. Rather than just let them tell, she continually tries to jump in and get there before they do. She just is always trying to steal people's thunder. So anyway, after she wrecks the arena moment, they have a sort of deflated reading of it, where Meghan's just sort of nodding along and like acting like, oh, I know this. I mean, this quote's imprinted on my heart. I know. Yep, that's my favorite part. Yep, that's good. And then, that's it. Sprinkled throughout this horrendous experience was 5 separate times when, just as Jamie would ask a question you kind of wanted the answer to, she would cut away for another one of her promos. I've never in all my born days seen somebody so exceptionally into themselves when it came to the editing of their program. You guys, if I stopped this video 5 times to give you a long thing about how you needed to share this video, then extended it even longer into how awesome I think that I am, and showed you different comments from under videos where people said they liked the show, and I did that 5 times in an episode, I'm telling you right now, unfollow me. If I were to ever do anything so ridiculously repugnant, I would hope you would turn your back on me, because I would be a terrible person, stuck on myself and demanding your attention. Unacceptable. Somebody needs to pull her aside and be like, this is untenable. The number of times you needed us to watch the celebrity promo about how awesome you are. Gross. It's annoying enough when people stop to tell you, let me give you another ad read, but you understand why they have to do it. To just stop the show 5 times to tell us how awesome you are is unacceptable. And so this is my wrap-up comment here. Most boring thing I've ever listened to in my life. And I know I've said that about a lot of things to do with Meghan. This, I really feel like it takes the cake, because there were no interesting questions. There was no interesting in-depth explanations. Meghan's responses were just skipping the surface. There was no depth whatsoever. When they tried to come up with depth, when they tried to come up with meaning, it was immediately deflated by the spear of their personalities. And I just can't believe, I cannot believe that this Jamie has a podcast, if this is the kind of thing that she's bringing to people. Maybe her other interviews are better, I don't know, but I can tell you right now that this was somebody so desperately needing that Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, HRH, to like her, that there was no possibility that this was going to be a really interesting conversation. And Meghan is just, regurgitating, retelling, same instances, same wording, same stories. There was nothing about her that seemed genuine. But again, at the end of it, between the two people, she at least was less off-putting than the interviewer. And again, that is saying something. All right, if you got to the end of this super long explanation of what we witnessed in that interview, bravo you. I cannot believe you made it. Congratulations. And I will see you guys later at the next video. Tomorrow is Friday, so I'll see you tomorrow for the Friday News Roundup. Talk to you later. Bye.